The following is a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club. Round 3 of the Winter Classic here in St. Louis. Group A's top seed, Ray Robson, sealed his fate with an unadvisable pawn capture against Darius Svirts. Daro is now in clear first. Group B's Nicholas Theodorou earned his first win against Perelstein. Coverage of Round 4 starts now. 20 international chess professionals compete in St. Louis as USChessChamps.com presents the second annual Winter Chess Classic. The excitement here in St. Louis is at a fever pitch because of the worldwide happening that's about to happen in London. The World Chess Championship starts tomorrow. But today, here in St. Louis, it's all about the Winter Chess Classic. So come on into the studio, Studio B. Hello, chess fans. Ben Simon here with Grandmaster in Residence, Jesse Kraai, and we have a whole bunch of awesome games set for you today.
Absolutely. Everyone's pumped up about Fabi playing tomorrow. And I feel like we'll look at some of these games and we're going to see some of Fabi's and Carlsen's influence on the style of their play. So that's coming up. And I just wanted to start the show by asking you, who do you think is going to win?
You know, it's a tough question, but I feel like this is going to be a special thing, a special event, and I really feel like Fabiano Caruana is going to pull it out.
All right, now I'm going to follow up with that. So before this round, we asked all 20 players, the A and the B section, who do you think is going to win? Which is just a show of hands, you know? And I want to ask you, how many do you think voted for Fabi?
Now it's who they thought would win.
Thought would win, yeah.
I'm going to say out of the 20 players, 5 voted for Fabi.
Only 2.
2 players?
Yeah.
Who were they?
Sassi and Ali Morandi.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's who they thought would win. You know, look, they're only 3 FIDE ELO points apart.
You know, it's funny. I think I think most people feel the way I do, where they think Fabi has the best shot of all of the previous title matches. You know, against Anand and Karyakin. But it's still Carlsen's match. The guy, when you talk to people here, you talk to Perelstein, for example, you just think Carlsen is a god. And there's reason to think that Carlsen is actually a god. So, yeah, I think, you know, for me, I think most chess players, you know, who study their games are like 55 to 60% with Carlsen. But definitely that Fabi has a chance.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch. It all begins tomorrow. But, hey, this tournament doesn't stop. We're in round 4. Let's take a look at Group A standings after 3 rounds have been played. Now, we do actually have a tie at the top, Jeffrey Zhang and Darius Svirts. And look how nicely, evenly staggered all of these players are, with 2 players at each level here. What are you taking away so far from Group A, Jesse?
Well, I'm very impressed with Jeffrey's play. He could well have 3 out of 3. Sasi Kiran pulled off a nice draw yesterday, but Jeffrey was really pressing. And in classical style, he fixed his bad pieces. He was ahead on the clock. And it's very hard to get. No one's had an edge on Jeffrey the entire tournament so far. So Jeffrey is still out there. And Daro is really the beneficiary of Ray Robson falling apart. I feel like Ray is, he kind of played with a death wish yesterday, and or as the poker players would say, he was on tilt yesterday. Right. That's the way it felt to me. So hopefully Ray can find his footing again. And definitely the key matchup today is the 2 American players, top players, Jeffrey and Sam. Yeah,
we'll get to that in just a bit. Let's see what's happening in Group B as far as the standings after 3 rounds have been played. Now here we do have a clear leader. He's not 3 for 3 as was possible, but he started off 2 for 2. Lucas Van Forest of the famous Van Forest family. Can he hold on to this lead? Any surprises in this field? What do you take away from this one?
Oh, I'm definitely surprised. I don't think anyone expected Van Forest to be leading the tournament at this stage, and it looks like he's going to win today. So he's going to be at, 3.5 out of 4. That's an amazing result. You know, I think people expected Andriazian or the other Armenian Hakobian to be on top, right? And no, that's not the way it's playing out so far. Anything can still happen here, and my just intuition is that Lucas Van Voorst, his luck is going to run out at some point, and then the field will really be wild for the next couple rounds. That's my guess.
If you're just joining us, this event is comprised of two 10-player round-robin fields. All play all, 9 rounds, and the time control is a classical. We have 90 minutes for the first 40 moves, and then 30 minutes added on after that. And there is a 30-second increment from move number 1. Now, remember, because of that, all the players have to take notation at all times, and it's also important to note that there is a 30-move draw rule in effect. The players cannot agree to a draw before Black's 30th move. So that's to encourage fighting chess, and that's definitely what we're seeing in this event. It's what we see in all of these classic tournaments, a lot of decisive games and a lot of bloody games. So let's take a look at our tournament schedule. Now, we are almost halfway through, and this will go through until next Tuesday. Every day, the rounds begin at 1 p.m. Our show begins 2.5 hours after the start of the round, and the final day will start earlier across the board because we will have a playoff for first, if necessary, in either field. Now, it's also, we're making history here, Jesse, because this tournament and the World Championship coverage that the St. Louis Chess Club is presenting will be the first time that we've ever had 2 separate English language broadcasts going on the same days. So it's wild over here in St. Louis. I know that we still have the Invitational coming up, all this stuff. It's crazy here in St. Louis. It's going to be a lot of fun. Keep in contact with us. Of course, you might be watching on YouTube and uschesschamps.com. We are also on Twitch, and I have the YouTube chat open. God help me. So if you want to send your questions, please do so, and we might just read them on the air and give them an answer. Hashtag Winter Chess Classic to join the conversation on social media. Okay, here are the pairings going on in Group A right now upstairs, 2 floors above us. Christian Sasakiran versus Miro. Daro Spirits versus Yuneski Quesada. Hrant Makumian versus Ray Robson. Alexander Shimanov versus Alexander Motilev. And this was your key matchup here, Jesse. The 2 American youngsters, Jeffrey Zhang and Sam Sevian. Lifetime score between the 2 of them in classical chess. 3 draws and 1 win apiece. So let's see what happens here today.
Yeah. Well, right, let's get into it. This game is really fascinating. One thing I said at the beginning of the show was I really feel like in a lot of these games that we're seeing throughout the tournament, it feels like you can feel the influence of Fabi and Carlsen. A lot of E4, E5 positions that are not the classical Fischer style. For example, in this game, we started off with this bishop c4 and then d3. So games really inspired by Magnus where white isn't trying to knock black out immediately, but rather to get a slow maneuvering struggle. And people have learned from Magnus how to torture at a very minimalistic rate. And that's what's been going on in this game. Let's go to the move before. I feel like Jeffrey has slowly outplayed Samuel here. And like in our other games that we've seen, he's always ahead on the clock. Here he's got 38 minutes to 12 minutes, and we got 13 moves to go. And it's very unpleasant all of a sudden for black. It felt for the longest time, too. I was telling you and others, I was saying, I don't really know what the plans are. But now it's starting to become concrete. And this last move, queen c3, actually, I'll take it back one step. I was saying in this position, to myself anyways, I was saying, well, I don't ever really want to go there because I don't want the knight, I don't want to trade the knight off, right? Well, look what he did to me. He did it anyway. But there's a special trick, and this is important to understand the position. He doesn't actually want to trade the knight on e7 off. What he's saying, though, is that he can leave this knight here as long as he wants, because anytime you take, I'm going to play ef, and I'm going to embarrass your rook and I'm going to open up my own e-file coming down here. So it's very clever. It's a way to hold attention because it means that, you know, we're not actually interested in trading the knights, but we're going to make it impossible for you to do so. Rook e8, and now another nice move, queen c3. Obviously, it's looking at g7. That's the most obvious thing. And this rook on g6 now is not allowed to return to where he probably wants to eventually come, which is rook e6. In addition to that, we're tapping this little pawn over here, and that might be a problem for a tactic like b6, knight takes b6, and queen takes a5. Let me get that arrow up. So due to all that, Samuel took, and here was a big decision, let's say a pleasant decision for Jeffrey. I think a lot of players would have liked to keep their structure whole with a takes b5, but Jeffrey played, let's call it the active attempt with rook b5. And this does it, well, let's say some bad things about it first. Now all these pawns are a little more hokey, right? And there's definitely some squares for the knights, right? Like the knight coming to c6 and the knight coming to c5 or e5, touching all these pawns. However, this rook is simply active on b5, and he's doing a lot of things. He's touching that pawn. He's touching that pawn. And he has lateral movement this way, which might not be insignificant because we can even consider stuff soon like knight h5. And all of a sudden, like Samuel, in time pressure, has some difficult pressure to figure out what to do in this position. And it's not easy to block the queen, you know, and it's not easy to defend this pawn. And maybe the big question is, like, what terrible thing, the question Samuel's asking is, what terrible thing is going to befall me if I play the natural b6 to guard my a pawn, right? Maybe knight h5. Maybe knight h5 is the problem. In short, I'm saying that there's a lot of grief here for Samuel, and that's so unpleasant when you have less time than your opponent, and you really are going to need some good moves in this position. And I like the knight f5 a lot, especially because to me it was at first even something I didn't want to do, and then I realized, oh, it's just you can never take it. And then queen c3 creates a situation where you can't then move your g6 rook. One way to talk about this position is that we're playing against the rook on g6 who's a little bit offside. Maybe a good analogy would be, you know, in tennis when they go up to the net. Yeah. Not always good to go up to the net. You can get caught up there. Correct. And that's what a lot of times the rook lift feels like. Because you go with your rook and you lift it, but then you need to come back to the baseline. And Jeffrey's saying, no, you can't come back to the baseline anymore. So beautiful game. And go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, there's a lot going on here for sure. I was thinking of that knight h5 move as well. How would you defend against that if you are black?
It's unpleasant. It's just unpleasant.
I mean, if b6 is played or something like that.
Let's say b6 and knight h5 happens. Yeah. Well, one question is, could you get away with knight e5? And I think the answer is no, because if nothing else, we can snip on g7 and then play f4. So there's no convenient way to just block off the diagonal. And, you know, please don't play f6. Then your rook is really toast, right? So that's the thing that is, that Samuel's thinking about. And honestly, ditching the a pawn might be the way to go. But still, even if you're going to ditch the a pawn, you need a constructive move right now. And notice that the knight on e7, he's really unfortunate because he can't take on f5, and yeah, you can't. If you say bring it, go knight c6, that would be another way to defend the pawn. Now you can't even take here anymore, and knight h5, I assume. And then how do you defend g7? It's a real mess. So I'm really enjoying Jeffrey's game today. Maybe I'll go back a couple moves just to show you how hard it was for me to understand this position. Yeah, let's walk through it. This position has been seen in several games. Not that I necessarily understand it that well, but this is definitely Magnus-inspired stuff. Bishop e6 is common in a lot of these variations, and it's a small concession because the light squares end up being just a touch weak, but definitely playable for black. And then they do this knight thing. They c6. And when I look at this, it just feels to me like I don't know why I would. If I was white, I wouldn't know why I would believe why I was maybe better or what I was supposed to do. So look at these small moves. Rook b1, queen c7, bishop d2, rook c8, c4. Now, a move like c4, to me, it's like, well, I'll put my pawns on light squares because my bishop's on the dark square. But like, what am I actually doing? I'm not sure. I'm not actually sure exactly what I'm doing. And here was maybe the beginning of a little touch. Well, I'm just going to go back. That I'm going to call the massage, right? Because I'm in no hurry. I can repeat the moves, too, if I want to. And it's actually this moment where Samuel, says, I'm going to run to the net with rook g6. And that's just a dangerous move. At the time, I wasn't sure it was necessarily bad because I didn't know what white was supposed to do. Now, he's threatening rook g3, right?
Well, because the pawn is pinned. Yes.
The pawn is pinned because this bishop. And I think part of the motivation with rook g6 was not just to rush the net in some kind of very aggressive way, but to maybe force this and say that that's a good thing to get this trade. Okay, it would seem like maybe if you were black, a5, b5, knight c5. Honestly, it looks like black is fine to me. But it's just a couple more moves and then black is in a difficult spot. d4 takes, knight d7, and then here we go, knight df5. Already unpleasant. Maybe if we get them in here, we can ask about knight d7. Maybe knight d7 is not the right move. But already, yeah, it's unpleasant. And then with queen c3, it then becomes obvious even to a guy like me that there's some problems on the board. Now, we do have a move played, so let's take a look. Takes, rook takes, and knight c5 was played. Okay, so now there's 7 minutes left for Samuel, 35 for Jeffrey, and white has several reasonable options. There is rook a5, queen a5, knight h5. There might even be something else. Let's say queen a5 is a mistake. If queen a5, well, maybe even you could do this. I was thinking at some point knight c6 would save black, but even then. Yeah, this maybe this somehow survives in rook a8, and you have strong counterplay.
I really like the old idea knight h5 still.
Let me tell the chess fans out there somewhere, my co-commentator, Ben Simon, is a professional wrestling commentator. Right? No, I'm serious.
It's true.
It's true. And one thing a professional wrestling commentator will be drawn to is in a position like this to fly off the top rope.
Let's
right?
do it.
That's flying off the top rope. When you come and you jump down and you make that move like that and you fall on the guy.
Splash, I'm more a diving elbow type of guy, but yeah.
Oh, that one?
Yeah, there you go.
It's kind of a diving elbow. Now, the danger with a move like knight h5 is just that it's going to be kind of hairy, right? But yeah, of course he's looking at it. Yeah, of course. Let's say you have to figure out a way to meet knight a4. Maybe you just ignore it, for example. Maybe you just say, okay, whatever. I'm going to go on with my own show. You have to find something. You don't actually have to find anything against knight e6. If the guy plays knight e6, fine. Don't worry about it. You can take the pawn on a5 now if you want, right? That's just a miserable square. But let me put it this way. In chess, my experience is that when you go in for the kill, that's where the violence really happens. And as you know from wrestling, going off the top rope is a really dangerous thing.
It's high risk. They call it high risk.
High risk,
Yeah.
that's right. If you miss the guy,
Yeah.
oh, that's painful. That's a really painful.
What just happened on the board here? I see a capture on G7.
Whoa, now I didn't even see that coming. I wasn't looking for that. This is truly coming off the top rope. Uh-oh.
All right.
Oh, that is real.
Okay.
All right, let's play this out. Rook G7. I'm going to assume knight H5.
Right.
Oh, wow, this is getting evil. Let's try Rook G6. And now, the question is, how are you defending mate? Oh. Wait. This can't be real. No, maybe I don't understand. I have to admit, I might not understand this fully here. Because the knight can still go back. So that's not the answer. Let's look at this again. Rook G7. All right. Tell me if you see something. Knight H5. Rook G6. Now I can also play Knight F6. Now, one thing I don't entirely... Oh, there's some tricky stuff going on here. One thing I don't understand about Knight F6 is what are you going to do if the guy just plays King F8? I mean, maybe Rook takes Knight too, you know. So there are things... Okay, this is on the board now. Let me pull this up. This is the board position. And this is fascinating. Jeffrey sees a tactic here, and it's not immediately evident to me what it is. And further, just from a positional standpoint, I want to note that when he's coming off the top rope like this rook on b5, who he'd like to have in the attack, is not in the attack, right? So one thing that black would give black some hope is the fact that that rook is out of play. Let's go ahead and play the natural move. Rook G5 might also be playable, but I think Rook G6 is definitely the natural move. And besides Rook G3, do we have any other moves? Maybe let's try Rook G3 again. So just to point out, if you try to do something like that, I'm going to snip and there's no defense against mate. Right? So let's say Rook G3. Now, there's several candidate moves here. Let's try Knight E6. All right? Well, Knight F6 might be some trouble. King F8. This is the real deal here. There are several moves that white can make here that look frightening. One, even just a slow move like Rook H5, just to say, I'm bringing everything over. And one nice comforting thing for white is, if he doesn't have something amazing, you could always play Knight H7, King G8, and Knight F6. So it's always good to have that out.
What about back in the position where the king's on F8? Is Knight H5 a possibility? Right here.
Well, remember, he just came from there, too.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Just repeat, yeah.
Yeah, this is, okay, so honestly, let me bring out my, this is the golden ball. When I don't know what's going on, I rub it a little bit just to get a sense.
It's golden.
It's golden. It's very smooth.
All right.
I'm not very smooth, but that ball's very smooth. And let's get this, okay, Rook G6 has been played. Now we're about to see what Jeffrey, I'm going to assume Jeffrey has some deep variations worked out here. I don't see anything else convincing besides Rook G3 isn't necessarily convincing, but that would make sense to me other than Rook G3, where really we need to get this guy involved. And after Rook G3, there's just a question to me of like, well, what moves, if any, are available to white after black after Rook G3? For example, he could even consider Knight C6, hoping that the queen has enough control on g7 to defend the mate. There's always this move, though. You can always take the rook, but is that... Actually, let's look at this. Here's a nice trick. King f8, knight d5, hello. That's a nice one. Now queen h8 isn't the mate threat. Whew. All right. This is looking pretty real with rook g3. What else could black play? Let's try this ridiculous looking king f8. So the idea is if I check you, there's like a knight g8. That might be my first instinct if I was black. And I'm not... Oh, well, okay, hold on. So rook takes. You got to take with a knight because of mate on g7. You can check on g7, but why is it a big... Oh, maybe like this. Now I'm threatening knight d5 with a big check.
Royal fork, yeah.
Still, though, I believe in black's position because this knight is keeping our friend the rook out. I really want the rook in. Well, I think you're responsible for this because you told him to go off the top rope. We were saying knight h5 without sacking. That looked like a sane move here.
Right.
That looked like the sane move. He just went nuts here. And we're going to see. Maybe, hopefully, we'll talk to him after the round.
Yeah, let's see if this pays off. In the meantime, let's just at least glance at some of the other games here. First of all, here's the pairings in Group B. Yeah, we have a whole other section here. Lucas Van Forest versus J.J. Ali Marandi, Eugene Perelstein versus Viktor Michalewski, Joel Benjamin versus Nicholas Theodoro, Robbie Kevlishvili versus Zavan Andreassian. And our key matchup this round, what Jesse Kraai figures to be the most interesting game, is Aram Hakobian versus the evil video game boss. You can see right there who missed his photo shoot, Timur Gareev. So let's take a look at this game. First time these two have never met each other. Of course, Timur did miss the first round, so he was not here for the photo shoot. What's going on in this game, Jesse?
Well, I admire the way Timur played this a lot. You know, I was talking to my friend GM Josh Fidel a while back, and he said, you know, he's younger than me, but he said, you know, his generation is the last generation to believe that the Benoni is playable. And, you know, there's been several games where Fabi has been willing to play against the Benoni even a tempo down. That's how bad these people think the Benoni is. But against this move, f3, which is topical, there's a lot of different ways for black to play. Timur says, let's take it into a Benoni. And this kind of structure has been seen a bit. And I love the way Timur plays this. Now, queen a5 threatens b5 because you cannot take it because of the rook. So then the rook is nice on a3, but it's questionable of how useful it is. Queen b4, bishop e2, knight e5, castles. And in my own philosophy of the Benoni, I already liked Timur's chances here because he's able to exchange at least one piece off whenever he wants with knight c4. And the problem with the Benoni is you have a spatial problem. Right? White has more space. But if you can trade off the pieces, it'll make stuff easier to move because your own pieces won't be running into each other in the backfield, to borrow another sports analogy. Right. So knight fd7, queen c1, knight c4. And objectively, this might be fine for white, but I already felt a little bit insecure for him. Knight e5. Look at this. We're going to open everything up and go into this endgame where white correctly now brings his knight back to head to c4. And this is a good maybe way to introduce what's going on. White is going to hope that getting his knight to c4 will solve any other problems he has. If he gets it there, of course, he'll be hitting the weak pawn. And if that one falls, then this one falls. And that's the terror of every Benoni player out there. However, Timur is able to make use some tactics to make it at least hard for him to do that. Rook takes, knight d2, rook b5, and on rook a6, there's knight b4. King f1, knight b4. We repeat a little bit, and then bam, f5. King e2, knight b4, rook c1, bishop b2, rook d1. And so the position is still very complicated. White is still hoping that at some point knight c4 is going to save him. He's also saying that maybe my king is better than the black king. But black is, like a lot of times in the Venoni, black is the one with the activity, at least the temporary activity, and he's also the one with an extra pawn. So tight game up ahead, and you know, one thing we've decided to do here is if Timur wins, we're going to have him jump out of the plane.
Yes,
that's
yes,
right.
That's the new agreement. With every victory, we get to see him in that wonderful U.S. chess video.
That's right.
Okay, so we've glanced at that game. We have a very active chat today. We want to thank everybody for joining us in the YouTube chat. And we've got a question, actually, from Brandon in Indiana. He says, "Hi, guys. I'm unrated in the USCF, and there aren't any tournaments hardly ever. The only ones are 3 hours away from me. I don't know what to do to get rated. Any advice for Brandon, Jesse?"
Brandon, come to St. Louis at least once in your life.
Maybe further away. I don't. It's tough. I mean, look, before the St. Louis Chess Club, if you lived in St. Louis, you had to drive maybe 2 hours to Columbia, Missouri, or Jeff City to play in an event, or maybe Kansas City every now and then, Chicago. Few and far between, right? If you're not in one of the hot spots.
Where's our caller? Or where is he from again?
He is from, he didn't say the town, but somewhere in Indiana.
Oh, Indiana. Oh, there's all kinds of places you can go in Indiana. Yeah. Yeah? Chicago's right there. Depends where you are in Indiana, of course.
You do have to travel a little bit.
A little bit. But, you know, one thing I will say, it's really interesting, is that, you know, of course, I grew up going to tournaments. I grew up, by the way, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Not a lot of tournaments there, right? Not a lot of tournaments. So I know where he's coming from. But in contrast to my youth, now you can get very decent competition online. So many different sites where you can play. And you can even start getting some longer games. So it's a very rich environment out there right now. I feel like it's booming with the internet, because it really means that in contrast to before, everybody can play. Everybody can play. And actually, you know, one funny question I was asking the other GMs last night is I said, all right, let's imagine that Fabi wins. How will American chess change? You know, just get your intuitive reaction to it. And the more I thought about it, I was like, you know, what's really going to happen is the online chess playing community is the one that's going to most explode, right? That's where people are going to go and be excited about it. People who have never played before, and they're just going to log on in their lunch break, and they're going to be in. They're going to be all in. Right. And I think that's where the big development could come there.
I mean, everyone keeps making the comparison to Bobby Fischer in 1972.
Right.
We know this is not a Bobby Fischer in 1972 thing. That was a whole different era, a whole bunch of different situations. But the USCF membership in 72 tripled.
Right.
And maybe even more than that. And so it won't be that much. But when people see all this stuff in the news about an American playing for the World Chess Championship, and I don't believe in superstition, winning potentially the World Chess Championship, yeah, people are going to be like, you know, I haven't sat down at the chessboard in a little bit. Let me go to chess.com or chess24 and see what's going on.
Well, and you know, one interesting thing about that is, I all respect to Boris Spassky, but Magnus is a chess god. I mean, Magnus is one of, you know, we're going to wait until his career is over before we judge him, but he's going to be in the top 5 at least, maybe 1 or 2 or 3, somewhere in there. So, I mean, Fabi's going up against the king. Yeah. I mean, this is a much bigger upset than Fischer beating Spassky. This is a guy who no one thought ever would get beaten. So in a way, it's a much bigger match. All right, I have to take us to Jeffrey's game, because things have happened there, and it's getting very hot, and the knight e6 move that we had on the board actually happened. And one of my real questions is if this was an intuitive sacrifice. But I just want to note some basic things that have happened. White's big problem was that this rook on b5 was not involved in the attack. And just in terms of my own prejudices, I don't believe in attacks when one of your pieces isn't involved. But the knight e6 move allows the rook to at least gain a glance, a look at the king. And so all of White's pieces are now involved. And Jeffrey's last move, f4, is asking some basic questions about what do you want to do about f5. And we have a move. Rook takes g3 was played. And we're anticipating now queen takes g3.
And there it is.
That happened. And it's looking grim. Here's an example of a variation that could happen that would involve this rook. King h7, knight f6 check to the miserable king, king h8, rook h5. Now, it's not going to end that way, but that's just an example of how the rook gets in. Okay, so the king went to f8, which is the far more reasonable square. Now, again, let me just say for the chess fans out here, perhaps that Jeffrey has this all figured out. Maybe. I do want to say, though, that he really did come off the top rope and play knight g7 on move 29. It seemed like he had a powerful attack without doing knight g7. So if it's intuitive, that makes it even more special, because it's like you're saying, Jeffrey's saying, I know it feels like I'm taking a risk, but I believe in this position so much that I just think White should be winning. And maybe a general plan here, I think anyways, the first intuition is to get this rook. If we can get the rook to h5, that would be a nice thing. It's hard to, I'm sure he's got other tricky things going on, but knight f6 seems like a reasonable first question. With a mate threat. It does come with a mate threat. And there are several moves that black can play. But if you imagine something like knight g6, it feels like we're getting at least our piece back. And the attack would continue. The attack isn't going to stop. So, on knight f6, Jeffrey's thinking about it now. Let me say it again. Jeffrey has 26 minutes, and Samuel has almost 2. They do get 30 seconds to move, and I'm going to guess that Samuel is going to have to make at least 1 or 2 more difficult moves before this is all over. And it might already be over. Like, it'll be really interesting if we can get Jeffrey in the studio to ask him about what he saw and what he didn't see.
I do have the first result of the day, Jesse.
Okay.
In Group A, there is a draw between Miro and Sasakiran.
Right.
Miro is black. And the bishops are similar colors, but gridlocked pawns. So that game is a draw. And now Sasi, you know, he's still floating at the top.
I'm going to flip to that game and try to make a certain point about the coming match. I think a lot of chess commentators are wrongly going to be mad if there's some draws in the Fabi match. There are actually going to be
some draws.
There's going to be some draws, and I'm okay with that. What Miro did is he said, let's play like Fabi. Let's play the Petrov and see if you can crack me, right? I think this is definitely one of the openings we're going to see where Magnus is going to have to really prove himself, and a lot of games are going to end like this position. I think that's what I think is going to happen. Magnus will try all kinds of tricks, and I think what Magnus really is looking for with his team now is simply to find opening positions where Fabi doesn't know quite what he's doing and be able to outplay him in those. Yeah. So we are going to get some positions, and when you hear chess commentators moaning about the draw, forget about it. This is a meaningful result if black can just hold solidly every round.
Well, and also talking about the World Championship, yes, nowadays the vast majority of the games are draws. I mean, because you've got such high-level chess being played, and in 2016 there were 2 decisive games out of the 12 regulation. The rest, there were 10 draws. So, but the drama was, 2 years ago, Carlsen was down a game against Karyakin, and with the frequency of draws, you just draw to the end. Karyakin's the new champion. But Carlsen eventually regained that point with a win of his own, and then they went to a playoff.
Okay, let's bring it back to the Jeffrey game. And I was wrong, unsurprisingly. F5 has been played, knight g5. And before we get into the tactics, notice that the pawn on f5 really is messing with this knight, like coming in, right? And I assume h4 now is going to come. And obviously then if the knight moves, there's a thing called mate. So the knight will have to give itself up after a move like h4. But there's all kinds of potential counterplay with, say, let's say h4, queen c4, right? And if you imagine takes, we could do something like this. We could actually come to an endgame, but honestly, this endgame, I think, looks abysmal for black, because black is now going to be close to equal on pawns, but white is just more active here. And rook takes a5 is the only move. Actually, this move looks far more convincing. So better knights, better rook, and knight f6 can come when we need it to come. Jeffrey's thinking about h4 though, so I've been wrong about other moves of his, and it wouldn't surprise me if he has a more devastating move. For example, he could consider c5. It's funny, like, let me just say this. Most players around my level, which is not a very high level, when we sacrifice something, we want it to be very concrete, right? We want to feel the security of knowing that we're not going to just lose. And this sacrifice feels very positional to me. And those are the most impressive, because those are the ones where you don't know from the beginning what exactly is going to happen, right? And it's more your intuition that's guiding you. Like the exchange sacrifice that Jeffrey played yesterday against Sassi, which was a very impressive sacrifice, and I thought gave good chances for him to win. And the genius of having more time is, in a position like this, you can really start to calculate everything out. And so Samuel has to be wondering about the move c5. He has to wonder about the move h4. And it might always be, there's always chances of throwing some nasty knight f6 in at some point. So it's funny, if I didn't know that Jeffrey was playing this, and if I didn't know that he already had a position that was good, maybe I would say it's an unclear position or like that. But just knowing that Jeffrey willingly went into this, I guess it's part of my reason for believing in it. Also because it seems like after h4 that white, at least, the best black can get, it seems, was that queen c4 variation. I didn't see anything else for the guy. Whew, it's going to get hot. Should we take a look at a different game? Let's go to Timur just for a second.
Okay.
Let's see if he's going to jump out of the airplane.
The Group B key matchup.
So white got his pawn, knight on c4, and the problem with getting the knight on c4 is he gave Timur the pawn. Now, it's getting to a very critical moment for white. The problem is, let's just show this, that if knight takes d6, e takes is going to happen, and this bishop is unfortunately going to fall. So white is trying to figure out what he's going to do after f takes e4. And I assume he has some idea before he played knight c4, because when you think about what Timur's been playing for, it's been to tactically prevent knight c4. Because if white is ever able to effectively take on d6, it really is the end for black, right? But f takes e4 looks very strong to me. One conceivable problem could be, can white play bishop takes d4? And that's in fact what happened. C takes d4. And now let's ask ourselves the obvious question. What's going to happen on knight takes d6? Who is better and why? That's the question I like to ask. It looks like an exchange is at least going to be lost, but there are several interesting tries for black. Maybe he doesn't even lose an exchange because we could just take here. That isn't the only possible move for black, by the way. He could also consider maybe d3 check. But ef3, I think the notion would be that anywhere the king goes, I'll be able to give a check. But let me make it terrible fun. Let's double check that.
Okay.
All right. King f2. There is a check, but then I get to tag your rook as well. So that might be a problem. Very messy position. Very messy position. And it's really hard to say exactly what's going on. Of course, after king f2, you don't have to play rook e2. There's other moves as well. And of course, we're looking maybe to get some situation where we're just going to be down the exchange with nice compensation. That's why this move also pops out at me. Because now imagine if king e3, I'm going to go ahead and play e3. If king f1, I might still play e3, threatening e2, right? And if king d2, again, I at least worry about e3, right? And yeah, interesting move, right? And so Timur, let's figure this out. Timur is going to have 17 minutes, and Jacobian has to come up with a move right here. If he doesn't take on d6, however, I don't know, that's all you had. That was the whole idea of your position, right? Black is getting ready to do a simple and nasty move like knight d5, where he's going to be threatening knight c3 with the uber fork, right? Yeah, it's an exciting game from Timur. I think he's getting ready to jump out of the plane, personally. I think that's where we're headed today. Yeah.
Jacobian on move. I think they have, about 5 more moves to make the control?
Yeah, they got 5 more moves.
Yeah.
All right, guys, here it is. Let's go back to Jeffrey's game. H4 was played as kind of predicted, and Samuel quickly played queen takes c4 as we were talking about. So maybe once in my life I rubbed the crystal ball the right way and saw what was coming. So Jeffrey is wondering now if he has something better than h takes g5. Another nasty move that he might have, this could end the game, honestly, is queen d6. And queen h6 is the problem. Queen c1 looks like it's only a check. Just one check. It would be nice if black could get counterplay with knight f5 and rook e1. Unfortunately, that knight is pinned, so that's not going to work.
Right.
And Jeffrey again has the luxury here of having significantly more time after queen takes c4.
Jesse, I'd like to go elsewhere in Group A for a moment.
That's
the game between the Russians, Alexander Shimanov and Alexander Motilev.
Sure, let's take a look.
There's just been a pretty crazy exchange with rooks and a queen off the board here. Let's see what's going on. We might have to go back a few moves to really understand what sequence just happened.
All right, let's go here. Okay, so by the way, this has been a very interesting positional struggle for a while. And I'm going to show a position just earlier on in the game where white did this thing that I've tried myself, always with no success, to put my pawns here and say that the bishop is bad and the knight is bad, and then someday to dream about f4. And that's what Shimanov plays for. And I don't usually use the computer in my analysis of these games, but just because I've never been able to do this myself, I turned the computer on, and the computer kind of liked it, but kind of like with my experience, it just turns into a mess here, especially after f4. Maybe you shouldn't even play f4. All kinds of madness here ensues. And the problem is you're always weak on d4, and you're always weak on d3. So first thing, look at that. Nice exchange sacrifice. Shimanov says, no, I'm not interested. A6, you interested? No, I'm going to play queen g5. Shimanov is, he's played a lot of games as a wild man this tournament. G6, no fear. Knight a3, knight d4. So on the surface of it, it seems to me like black is already better. And this is what always happens to me in these positions. Things fall apart for me, and then my bishop ends up looking like a dork. All right, knight c4, rook e6, takes. Black looks better. And now here was the beginning of the madness. Right here, AB, knight a5, bishop c8, knight c6,
Okay.
rook a1, knight d8, rook f1, bishop f1, rook d8. Well, let me ask you, what's your first guess on this position? I don't like it. If I'm black, I thought I had a great position just a little while ago. And now my knight nh5, what is it doing over there? I sacrificed some big stuff. That was my queen. That was my lady. Why did I get rid of her? Queen a5, bishop e7. I love queen sacrifices. I think they're a great thing. But here, especially because black doesn't have any counterplay that I can understand, I don't like what's going on. I especially don't like this knight here on h5. So on that one, I'm rubbing the crystal ball.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on in that one. All right, let's go back. I need to go back. Queen c4 happened, and he's still thinking. I love it. So I think the choice is queen d6 or hg. HG looks like a very favorable endgame, and queen d6 might just be lights out. It's hard to imagine that queen d6 is not lights out. As you guys might remember from yesterday, something that might be hurting Jeffrey's soul right now is the memory of how Sassi escaped with a perpetual check in their game. And that is definitely going to be in Samuel's mind, some kind of like thing where I open the white king up and just start checking you to death. It doesn't seem immediately obvious how that's going to happen here, but that's one of the things that Jeffrey has to worry about. In this position, I think it's clear that even if you don't even think about the tactics, that things have gone white's way. When you look at how this knight isn't working, how the rook is not working, how the king is bad, how this rook. Remember at the beginning I said it had three ideas, right? Here, here, and then some kind of lateral play. It still retains all three of those options. And all three of them, especially taking on b7, look like it could create grief. HG5 is the old man's move. That's the one I would do. Give me my piece back. But of course he's looking at queen d6. Let's just look. Is there any defense to that move? It doesn't look like it, honestly. It doesn't look like you have, like, it looks like queen h6 is lights out. Rooks.
Jesse,
yeah, go ahead.
Can we take a look at a Group B game here?
Sure.
Joel Benjamin versus Nicholas Theodorou. Joel Benjamin, one of your favorites.
Mm-hmm. And also, Theodorou is one of my new favorites. That guy played an amazing game yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah. That was the game of the round. He came and did an interview, and I said, that's going to go in your book of best games. You know? All right. Yeah, let's take a look. It seems to me like Theodorou's been suffering for a while, and Joel has got the dream of every old man out there, which is to get your pawn up there, and it's protected by your bishop.
Ah.
That's the dream of every old man. In addition to that, it's got a nice centralized queen pinning the knight. So Theodorou looks like he's in big trouble here. That's my sense. Looks like Joel's in for his first win. But it's still not over yet. And as we've seen, Theodorou is a madman. And I'll say this. I was in there watching at the early going. And, you know, Joel played the C3 Sicilian thing. And then he played this knight a3 thing, and I'm like, Joel, I don't think I get it. I don't understand this kind of chess, you know. But he made it work, especially after a6, because I've never understood this thing for white. But at least now, the knight can later go to c4, like it does here, and create some drama with the b6 square. This is what happened, and now white's going to be at least having this bishop f3 threat, which he sets up with b3. You got to play b3 before bishop f3, or else you lose your knight. That would be a bummer. So this was all, you could see the beginnings of this bishop f3, right? Later on, he's the terror in the position, and you can see how it starts here. Ooh, look at that move. Nice. With bishop e3 coming.
Okay.
Bishop e3 is the problem.
Yeah, very nice.
And this looks right here like it's already close to lost. Yeah. Yeah, looks toast. Very nice play. And then let's just advance the pawn. So I'm going to call that a win for Joel, but it's not over yet. Yeah.
Another game in Group B that we should take a glance at is the top seed, Zavan Andreasyan, as black, the Armenian player taking on Ravi Kevalishvili.
Right. This was a fascinating game. It's really interesting position now. As old guys might remember, in the traditional Najdorf, Bobby back in the day played bishop c4, and that was a hard move to take down. Nowadays, there's a lot of mini antidotes to it, and it's not looking that good. In particular, there's some point you play queen b6, and it's really kind of annoying, and you have to really mess up your Sozin dream, which is eventually to play bishop b3. But check out what this little trick that Kevalishvili plays. Bishop e3, knight g4. So we've seen this a bunch. This bishop e3 stuff goes back a long ways. Knight f6, and then he says, oh, let's do the Sozin now and ask you how you feel about your position with the pawn on h6, i.e. does it make a difference? So we get this position, and I don't know how many people remember, but there was a Fischer game, I think it was against my sensei Smyslov, where this f4, f5 thing came early, and Smyslov was able to defend this position and show that black's was fine. In that game, the knight was on d7. However, there's an important difference. The problem in that game was that, what you're doing is you're forcing the pawn on e6 to move. But then, when e5 happens, this hole opens up, but there's no bishop g5 anymore. So that's a key difference with h6. However, you can see the light squares are weaker. All this happened. Kevalishvili lives on the wild side, and there finally is e5. And what you can see is he achieves Smyslov's dream of being able to adequately defend the d5 square. Bishop h4, now a nice move. Give me your good bishop. White obliges. And now we're going to get this interesting thing where I think black players believe in this kind of structure for themselves. The king is actually fine on e7. As you remember, Jeffrey Zhang had a similar king against, who was I forgot the guy's name on the top of my head. Round 2, right? That was that game. Shimanov, right?
Yep, Shimanov.
He snips. Dangerous. But it looks, here we go. Black gets his counterplay. And it looks, I would guess that black is winning this game. So still some work to do, but it's hard to imagine that black has everything going for himself. Not just the extra pawn. The king is better. The knight is better. Yeah, so very nice play from Andreasyan. They've just made time control, so they'll probably think about it a little bit.
Do we have any updates in the All-American Group A game of the day?
Let's go Group A. I'm really fascinated by this game. If you guys want to write in and tell me, Jesse, you're thinking about that game too much, I understand. I understand, but I'm obsessed. HG did happen. Samuel has 53 seconds left. Queen C1. Right, and so this is the variation we talked about several moves ago. I'm assuming King H2. Maybe King F2 is possible, but we're assuming King H2. And then Queen G5 is almost certain. And let's check my original assumptions there. My assumption was that takes, and rook b7. My assumption was that that was better for white. Maybe even significantly better. I think I'm going to stand by that. It looks pretty good. The other drama for black is that my king might become strong very quickly with king g3, g4. These pawns remain weak, and I might just win them. This knight can jump into f6 at any moment. And in a lot of ways, you can actually say that the attack is continuing here. Okay, we did in fact get this. HG happened, and queen g5, HG, rook b7, and let's get this correct. So, HG, he played knight f6 first, rook c8, rook b7, knight c6. All right, beautiful. I think the idea of playing knight f6 first was so that there would be no counterplay later on the e-pawn, which is really white's only problem. Maybe unnecessary, but notice that the rook doesn't have any great spots to go to. And here he plays knight c6. That's the last move of time control. So I'm assuming the players will think about it here a bit. I'm going to say this looks very, very good for white. Every piece is better, including the king. And I usually don't even like talking about pawns, but I'm going to say that white's pawns are also better. Now, if you wanted to believe in black's position, I think what you're going to say is that the knight on c6 is going to land on e5 at some point and be able to control key squares like g4, and that the rook might come to c4 or c3 to create counterplay. That's got to be the dream. However, in general, this looks like it's really good for Jeffrey and a really great game. I'm really enjoying this game where he sacked the piece. Maybe it wasn't the best move, but I love intuitive sacrifices because it shows to me a deeper level of understanding when you have the confidence to do it. Because you can't see it to the end. You're going into a dark tunnel and you left your money at the door. Right? You either come out of that tunnel with something or you've got nothing. Okay, knight h7 was played. So he's not giving any quarter here, right? Knight h7, and now it's a very simple play, actually. I should have noticed this one. It's very simple. We're just going to take the pawn on g5. I don't know where the king's going. We're going to take the pawn on g5. This guy's under threat. That's not pleasant. And on knight e5, we have more than one reasonable move, I think. But that's going to be our key position, I imagine, something like that.
So you fully expect Jeffrey to take this one?
To win this game?
Yeah.
It's not over yet. Not over yet. There's still, let's call it this way, there's still some technical things for him to figure out. But yes, I believe in the position. And black, if he's going to survive, needs to claim that the knight on e5 and the rook on c4 are going to be enough counterplay. Honestly, yeah, I don't think it's enough.
Let's look at Hakobian and Gareev, our plane jumper, in Group B action, because it looks like Timur's in really good shape right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought us back to that game. Let's go to where we were. C takes d4. Knight d6 did happen. D3 was not played, but rather checked to the miserable king. And now I was arguing for king f2. Okay, but king f1 was played. And now our jumper played knight d5. And that's an evil move that I can imagine somebody missing. The point is, like, I'm threatening this fork, and after I take your rook and you take me back, I have fg, and that's it. There's no more stopping the queen. So knight e8, knight e3, king f2. So let me just note the variation. If here, well, there's several ways to win. Fg right away, for example. But even knight takes, pawn takes, pawn takes. So king f2, knight d1, king f3, check to the miserable king. Oh, that's a mean one. That is a very mean check, because either of these moves with the king will fall to knight c3. We're jumping out of the plane today. Look at this. King g3, and now another nice move. Sap. Oh, I'm sorry, my friend. No, you cannot take my pawn on d4 because of knight e2. Check to the miserable king.
It's Fork City here.
Fork City. So white played rook a6, and d3 happened. And right, let me show you another fork that you're going to like. On rook d6, what do? d2. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for playing.
Well, I guess that is more stylish than just playing knight e4 outright.
Yeah, it is more stylish.
We rub that ball. Now, we'll fork it later.
That's right. Well, yeah, and there's no way, you're not even stopping anything. Yeah, there's no stopping this one. One maybe way to try, well, it's not going to work, but it's rook here, and then we just play d2, and you can get your check. You can even win my rook. You can win my rook with check, but it doesn't change anything. Right? Yeah. Okay, we have a position on the board here. So let's see what happened. Knight d6, d2, takes, d1. You could have, like we said, you could have taken the knight as well. I think it's time to resign. So, cue it up, boys. We're about ready to jump out of the airplane.
Yes. Not yet, though. Not yet.
It has to be official.
Yes.
It has to be official. Fans, as we've said, every time Timur wins, he's jumping out of the plane. We got that lined up for you. Personally, I wanted to jump out of the plane every day, but the staff here said, no, Kraai, you cannot have, dessert every day. Timur has to work for it. So we're only doing it when he wins. Only when he wins.
For more information on what we're actually talking about, uschess.org, this month's brand new Chess Life magazine, Timur Gareev. Hey, we have a result in this game. I'm going to tell you, Timur Gareev, well earned by him.
Well,
you see Timur
really
there
nice
on the
game.
right.
Very impressive game. Cue up. Let's play it.
Oh,
it's
gosh.
time to play it.
Oh gosh, here we go.
Right. No, right. Okay, good.
And yes, indeed, every single time Timur Gareev earns a victory during this broadcast, you are going to see that video. So, we should probably get Timur in here.
We're going to try to get Timur in here, and while we're waiting for him, I want to show you guys what Jeffrey's doing against Samuel. And
I would never have guessed.
We got this nice position, knight g5, knight e5, and this next move is really study-like. We check the miserable king. I'm assuming king f6 is going to happen, but other moves are going to happen. In fact, king f6 was played. And I'm assuming that the idea now is to play knight c7. It's a very nice move. And you ask yourself, what's the point? And the point is simply to deny the counterplay. I had an old Russian coach back in the day. It wasn't actually Russian, it was Latvian, Edmar Mednis. Actually, it's not even fair to say I had a coach. You know, it's just like once in a while. Once in a while, he'd help me out. And he would always, that was the thing he'd love to say. He said, deny counterplay. And that's what the knight on c7 is going to do. And the idea is that we want to keep the knight there to keep the rook out. And the longer we keep the rook out, that's going to give our king time to come in. And obviously, we want to do things like knight d5. Knight d5 check to the miserable king. And it's very hard, actually, for this knight on e5 to move. And if that's the case, then it's getting hard for black to move in general, right? The real squeeze is happening here. Knight c7 on the board. So I was correct about the intention. And beautiful play. Beautiful. I think this is getting very close to just simply lost. Yeah, this is what it looks like to me. One update I wanted to say is there's a website out there called 2700 Chess, and there you can see the top players and how they're rated. And Jeffrey is getting close to 2,700. At the beginning of this, he was 2675, and now he's in the 2780 range, right? And so with this win, he's not really that far from 2,700. It could, in fact, if he keeps this pace, he's going to hit 2,700 this tournament.
I think that would be remarkable. It would be spectacular. Yeah. Jeffrey Zhang is one of the best visiting players we've had here in St. Louis over the years from the Dallas area. Mm-hmm. I mean, the kid's awesome. He's great. I've just been told that we do have Timur ready to come for an interview. So let's look at some more games, and we'll get him in here. Let's go to the game that you drew us to a little while ago with a queen sack from Shimonov, or excuse me, from Motilev, that I didn't understand. I thought black was doing fine. Some kind of accident happened, and white has now won the b pawn, and black at least has brought his knight back from h5. So there's that bonus for black, but otherwise it just seems lost, and it seems like the d4 pawn is bound to fall at some point. So that just looks lost to me, but there's obviously some things in there that I didn't understand, like I didn't understand why black had to do what he did. One game we haven't talked about too much is Melkumian against Ropsin, and I really enjoyed the way Melkumian played this game at the beginning. It was clearly some prep, and he got this interesting position, let's take it to here, where kind of like a queen c2 Nimzo, he's got the unopposed dark square bishop here on c1, and I think a small nagging yank. At the moment, though, the game could go either way, though it seems like white should still have a nice edge here, probably with the move rook c5. So they've just hit time control, and white will think about it for a little bit, but I'm guessing rook c5, and yes, white has simply a nice position, though not over. Let's look at some of these other games before Timur comes in here. Eugene, my two friends Eugene and Victor, they've been fighting it out. The rule of knight endgames is often said to be that if you took the knights away and you ask yourself who would be winning, then that's your answer. This is clearly some kind of exception, because if we took the knights off, the a-pawn would simply be running. So the a-pawn, a huge advantage for Perelstein. However, 2 extra pawns for black, kind of a big deal. So I think we're going to say Big Mick has the advantage on that one. Joel continues to have a nice position. He brought his pawn to g5 to dominate the dark squares. And we have the famous Timur Gureyev. Welcome. Very nice game.
Cheers, appreciate it.
And yeah, let's take a look. One thing I was saying in the broadcast, is that my friend Josh Friedel said, he's the last generation where people believed that the Benoni was playable. Right? When I'm so old that when I was a kid, the Benoni seemed like a really cool thing. And I thought, yeah, I'm so happy you played like a Benoni structure. Very nice position.
Obviously, he's very solid with that F3 structure.
Right.
So, yeah,
right.
Black has to be quite enterprising to get counterplay going. Otherwise, it might be kind of a squeeze.
Right.
Kind of like what I experienced yesterday. Yeah. Just very unpleasant.
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions. I felt after knight c4, I was really enjoying your position because, it feels like in these things, if you can just trade off one piece, your position becomes much more manageable. And so already here, maybe, I don't know, objectively, maybe it's equal, but I would rather be black here. It's just more fun.
Yeah, knight c4, I get the light square bishop, right? Which is kind of positionally, it's a bit of a dilemma since all of white's pawns are, or the major structure, the central structure is connected via the light, the light squares, pawns placed on the light squares. Also, I have to be a little bit careful with the queen. But as I trade that bishop, the cool thing is my queen has a little more flexibility.
Right.
So even in the tightest spot, it may still have some squares and some tricks, which will definitely keep my position resourceful. Now, here I thought the most principal idea is f4, and this one I wasn't so the way he let me maneuver my knight over to e5 and just sit there with knight centralized, this definitely gave me advantage in the game. But if he played f4 with immediate idea to play e5, f5, all that standard stuff, and this is where like Benoni players find themselves in trouble a lot of the times, is this big quick attack with in the middle. And certainly I do have some resources here. Maybe check on d4, play maybe even as solid as playing f6. Yeah. So I can hold that for sure. But I don't know how ambitious I can be in my play to try to unravel my game. For example, something like b5, ab, knight b6, maybe some kind of pawn sacrifice. So if my opponent waited long enough for me, then I would definitely generate a crushing compensation. But then my opponent just throws that e5 in my face, followed by f5 possibly, and then knight e4, and I think that's just crushing. So I would have had to be very careful here in this situation after f4, which I think was the kind of the typical idea.
Though let's just say, you have a lot of ideas here. You got a lot of ideas. You could play check, and maybe even our friend knight f6.
Yeah, something like this. Yeah, so I didn't really dig so deep. I felt like f4 was going to happen. Right. So and then I would have been thinking pretty hard here. But yeah, I definitely like this. So e5, right, the most principal move here. And then I guess I jump for I go knight g4, right?
You have several options,
That's the idea. But then, knight g4, knight c2, e4. I don't know if that works. So knight g4.
This one, knight ce4?
h3, knight just follows to e3, right?
Yeah.
So let's then rook. But yeah, obviously, I mean, this gets pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, it would be your choice of what to do. Yeah. But maybe you're right. One bummer for white, of course, is after f4, he's probably thinking to himself, "Oh, it'd be great if I had that light square bishop."
Yeah.
That'd be really nice, right? Yeah. Okay, so bishop e3. That's principal. Knight e5.
So here I got all these options of coming in, and my opponent probably spent a good 20 minutes on one of the moves here, probably right about here, trying to figure out what to do.
Right.
So a5, and then here my opponent anticipated likely bishop b7, which I feel like there's some ways to maybe cover some of the squares, maybe like rook d1 or something, and then try to play b3, like some knight a2, just try and haul up those squares. But the weaknesses, bishop d7. What was the idea here exactly? I'm trying to remember. But he would have managed to, I think, solidify, like queen c2 maybe, with the idea of b3.
All I know, Timur, is that a guy who wouldn't jump out of a plane would play bishop d7. That's what I think I understand about you.
I felt like he had bishop d7 followed by bishop b5, definitely very attractive.
Yeah.
But I feel like I have to worry a little bit also because he can push my queen a bit. So I think rook d1 is what I was thinking, and then or king h1 maybe with the idea of b3. So then I don't have that check hitting that knight. I think king h1 is what I was worried.
King h1. Let's just say you played this move. I don't know.
So now he's got b3, I think.
Well, don't you?
Yeah. Queen b4, knight a2, queen d3, rook d1.
Oh.
So, but probably have some tactics
yeah,
here.
like knight d3, right?
Knight d3, yeah. I probably do so. Yeah. So yeah, maybe just bring the bishop in, activate over b5, try hitting those light squares.
Yeah. And if you trade, you're trying to trade the thing off, just more trades, right?
Yeah, and queen b4, knight to c4, possibly. You know, but yeah, maybe that was the smoother way to continue.
But that's the jumper move. That's the jumper move. I was like, oh, it's gonna get hot now. Yeah. Okay, so we did this whole thing.
But you know, this one is fairly simple. I think. I figured I had to. Yeah, knight d3 was very important, and then the important part is that if I don't play knight d3, he has a liberating idea, where after rook b6 he has that b4, and we end up trading. Because my rook on b6 is hanging in case I play knight d3, and then even if I get an exchange in some of these ideas, then he's getting this pawn compensation.
Right.
So yeah, here b4, rook a6, and then that would have really saved them a lot of trouble. I may still have some chances, but really it's making his life a lot easier. So knight d3. His principle.
Yeah, and what I want to say to the fans that it was really nice that you did here is you use tactics to make it hard for him to come after your weak point.
Yeah, his knight on g3 is but he played the great.
Yeah.
I feel like he played great up until.
And you used all these tactics to mess with him. There were so many forks. This knight was messing with him. You did a lot of forks.
Yeah,
man, a lot of forks.
A lot of forks. I might have overplayed it at one point.
All right, so here, knight f1, you snipped. All right. And I'm assuming
so
that
this is a free pawn so far.
Because rook a6, you
got knight b4.
Knight b4. And then on rook b6.
Oh man, I didn't calculate this deep. So maybe let's see. Oh my God, rook e3,
knight e3, right?
Oh man, so he could have done this.
Actually, no. Maybe you go like this. Rook e3. I don't know. It's complicated.
Bishop d4.
But then he plays like rook e2 or king, something.
No, I don't think this one works actually. I mean, I do get something, but I think it's about
like
equal.
Here?
Yeah, rook e2. I just don't have the. I mean there's.
That's funny. I was watching this and I was like, Timur has something against knight b4, rook b6.
Yeah, I didn't see it. But I mean, quite.
Maybe you've got some other thing here, like rook a6 and. I don't know.
Rook b1 is interesting.
Rook b1.
Yeah?
Let's just say he takes this guy.
Well, he just takes the pawn. Yeah, yeah. That's nothing. I don't think. There's I mean, I could play like f5 and try to go sharp.
Sure.
Here. I mean, that's probably the way to go. But yeah, I would have probably had to like mess with this kind of deal.
Right.
Yeah, f5 here, and it's pretty unclear, huh?
Well, his strategy also makes a certain amount of sense, right? He's saying, if I'm down a pawn now, but if I get the knight to c4, you're going to pay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's what he's saying.
Likely he probably missed that rook b6 as well. But certainly he has good chances in this position.
Good chances, yeah.
Once especially if he gets to put the knight on c4. So far he couldn't do that because of mating idea.
Right, let's show that
first
actually.
rank.
So knight c4, and then this is a bummer here. Again, the knight using his magic.
So he's centralizing his king, but the problem is his king just lines up with my rook. So
are you're like we're old school Russian, just repeat.
No, actually, I thought of an idea. No, I thought of taking on d5. That's what I figured, and but then I just wasn't gonna do so much. I don't think. So ed, rook e3, knight c4.
It's a bummer, right? Whenever he gets that knight to c4.
Yeah, I get this beautiful tactic on his bishop, and then once he penetrates and picks up the say pawn on a6, he has that check, and his knight connects, so he has a good play against my king. So I don't have the time to even like hold on to the advantage I may generate. Still probably some great chances for black. There's maybe some tactic here, but I wasn't delving so much into it. So,
okay, so that wasn't you weren't just repeating to mess with him.
No, I was thinking of knight d5, but then I realized that I might have better.
Yeah, this is a nice
chance with f5. Yeah, just undermining his center.
So let's check it out. King e2. Is that his best move? King e2?
So knight c4 is an
Yeah.
opportunity.
Sure.
But then I guess I pick up e4. Then let's say he takes on d6. Then I play rook b1, king e2, ef, and that's what I calculated. And here the idea is if king d3, then I have rook b3, and he falls into a mating net here.
Whew.
Yeah.
Okay. King c4.
Yeah, and then I take with the other rook, the 8, yeah.
Oh.
And then I have f3 still alive. I have rook c3 coming with a checkmate.
Ooh, let's just show that. Aye.
Yeah.
Nice. Very
Yep.
nice. Very nice. Yeah. Okay. So f5, king e2. Now you get to save your stuff.
So here I think I overplayed it a bit. So rook c1, I think I'm in a great shape,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I should have gone f4 here.
So let's show the idea. Bishop f4,
Knight d5.
knight d5.
So one idea for him to sack an exchange, but
Sure.
it just doesn't do so much here for him. Knight c3 because I have immediate threats against this
Threatening
king.
rook b2.
So if he solidifies with knight c4, I have rook b4.
Yeah.
And then his fortress kind of falls apart right away.
Right. If he could keep the rook, then we
Yeah,
believe in his
if he
position.
could keep the
yeah.
light squares and then make progress. So I think I can create immediate threats against this king, and that would have allowed me clear advantage. Now if he pulls back with the bishop,
You can still take on d5.
I can take on d5 with the idea of knight c3, and then so rook a6.
So we're saying
So
here.
bishop f2, knight d5, rook a6. So then let's see. Oh, now bishop b2. Oh, is it? Rook c2 now. Okay, so I don't quite get him here, huh?
Right, the problem here is any knight c3 is king's going to d3.
King is going
right?
to d3, king is going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess, well, I can still play against this king. So knight b4, then he picks up the pawn on d6. Knight c3, king e1, or king d3, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess, yeah, maybe this, or knight b6 I have. Yeah, so knight b6 here, probably best option.
Oh, nice move.
Then he has rook
Locking the
b1,
rook.
huh? And then maybe I trade rooks
But you
and
could
play rook
trade-
b8.
Or
Yeah.
knight c4.
Knight c4, king d3 he's got.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Rook b8.
But yeah. So, but okay. I mean, I
Alright.
did get something in the game as well, right? So this is,
So what was
no,
what-
maybe bishop b2 is better after all. I thought my tactic that I envisioned. So here the problem for me,
Let's just show what the idea is. So let's just say he plays that move, for example.
is rook b1, knight d5, and then the point being that so with this king on e2, even though I could have picked up that d5 pawn earlier for free, picking up the bishop on e3 right away, here it actually works out better for black. So bishop d4, and now I either get his knight to pull back to b1 instead of jumping over to c4, and I have tempo. So that works out as probably just a winning version for me. And now in this moment of tension, I think I get, I build up the advantage much better. Because the rook on b1 is kind of hanging.
Yeah.
It ties his knight up.
misplaced. That's right.
And
That's
he
a good
cannot
point.
trade on b5 because that just gives me everything.
See, it's funny. It's like you think you're a proud person hitting the rook away, the bishop away. In fact, you're just a victim. You're just a victim hitting
Yeah,
that.
the rook
that
gets
file.
trapped, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Rook d1. Bishop d4.
So yeah, here knight d5 could have been an option, followed by bishop d4. But I figured, you know, I just go with my
So
my
why
plan.
did you? Why was your just gut reaction after the game that bishop b2 you're overplaying?
Well, later, well, just because that knight d5 tactic, but it looks like white was resourceful there as well.
I see. Right,
But
right.
here, you see, well, here I was going to play f4. Here's the problem. So my original plan was to play f4 here, and then I don't have to deal with that rook stuff, because after bishop f4, knight d5, I'm just simply crushing him.
Right.
Because knight c3 coming in with force, f4 is hanging, so that's just winning, right? So that felt like a more forcing option.
Yeah.
And then knight d5 followed by the idea of knight c3 once he pulls the bishop to f2.
Sure.
So, but the problem, so yeah, so here, this looks great. But here the problem is knight c4. So that's the idea that I missed.
Oh.
And then here after fe, knight takes b2, knight takes d5.
Wait, knight takes d5, yeah.
And then rook takes d5, rook b2, king e3. And then I pick up the g2 and h2, but then he takes a6, d6 is hanging, so I have all those weaknesses. So this is probably just nothing with this king in the middle.
I see. So that was your original intention.
Yeah, that was my original idea, but then I realized that 4 wasn't good, so I figured I'll,
Come over here, bishop
yeah,
d4.
bishop d4. And I guess this makes sense, right? I get rid of his most powerful defensive piece, as it seems, combined with the pawn structure, that bishop actually comes out very strong.
Yeah, this was an intense position. We were looking at this, and I assume this is mostly intuitive, right, what you're doing here?
I mean, obviously, with all those pawns moving forward, I kind of wanted to just look for winning on the spot.
Right.
I mean, the problem is his king, obviously. He
Sure.
just falls into all sorts of checks, and then both of his rooks are gonna fall victim to a fork. But likely, so here one idea would be to push d3.
Yeah, that's what
and try
I was
to
looking at
just
that one.
eat his king alive. Huh? So d3, king f1 has to be played, right?
But then you have e3.
Then I have e3, and yeah, and then knight takes e8.
Whoosh.
So I mean, it looks like
I
I
believe
got
in
him.
your position here, yeah.
But knight c2, rook e4. That's the problem. Because knight c2 would just finish him on the spot. Rook d3, rook b1. But problem, knight c2, he's got that rook e4. Plus he has got some checks with the knight sometimes, right? But yeah, knight c2, rook e4.
But okay, e2.
e2 right away, king e1.
I don't know, take the thing.
Oh yeah, this, okay.
Maybe knight d5. Rook a6, rook b2.
Oh, so that was crushing, huh?
I don't know. Maybe he could survive with rook d6 or something.
But instead of rook a6, can we play rook d4?
Well, worst case scenario, you play knight e3, knight takes g2, right?
Yeah, and then I still have that a6 alive, right?
Right.
Plus I may have king f7, king e6, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, king f7, knight d6.
Yeah, you can't do it, yeah.
So take on g2. But then, look, my king is in a tricky situation. So if I take on g2, then he can come down rook d7.
Right.
And now, all of a sudden, I have to, well, rook f5,
Rook
right?
f5, yeah.
I'm picking stuff up, but I don't know. I just...
Yeah, it's still some work to do.
I figured ef was just kind of quicker. And then it worked, because I think he made a mistake.
Right, because I was thinking on ef
King
that he was
f2,
king
yeah.
f2.
Yeah, king f2 he had to play. Then in order to keep myself in the game against those
Right.
forks, I have to play rook e2 to like, you know, force into rook e3. And then so basically he wins the tempo picking up that pawn.
Right.
And then king f2 has to be played, right? Rook. I guess rook d5 here is best. Yeah, so I guess so rook b4, rook d6, and then take on d4. Oh, so maybe he takes with the other rook. That's the trick. He takes with the other rook. Then after I trade, he comes down to b8, so that he can stand behind. Like, I'm not so sure about that endgame, but
He has
so yeah,
chances to hold. Yeah.
well, yeah, maybe this is fairly drawish. If he comes from the back, maybe that's quite drawish. Because my original idea, if he takes, let's say, he takes with the other rook, then I trade rooks, and then we end up trading, and then rook e8. So I mean, it seems like I can put my rook behind the pawn, right? Maybe push the pawn one square if I can. If he blocks rook a5, then I bring my king to b6, hopefully I'm quick enough to keep pushing that pawn or activate my rook then. But it seemed like that seems like a kind of a strong plan. Perhaps I can, if he plays rook a4, maybe I can hold from the side and activate my. But I think that keeping the rook on a8 is a good idea.
Because rook a4, if you go to the side, he can even do like king.
He can come back, come back and try to come back around. Yeah. So this is less chance, less of a chance.
Yeah,
this is just a draw probably.
That's why we were watching this, and I was wondering about the choice here. D3 looked.
Yeah, that was my kind of original consideration, trying to just kill him there, right, with those pawns.
Well, let's look at how it went down, because there's some nice knight forks coming up here.
Yeah.
So we got a family fork on e3 and c3. Everything's hanging. He snips your rook. Check to the miserable king. And now, unfortunately, he can't go to really e1 for a variety of reasons. F2, FG, all kinds of stuff. So F2.
So he was a bit of he was in time trouble,
right?
You know? So I think that's what kind of made that mistake, you know.
Yeah, of course. So I mean, that's the thing when you play the Benoni, right? You're playing the long game, get him a long time pressure, and then you get him, bam, with that move. Check to the miserable king. Yeah, that was a nice one. So no getting out, and then he goes this one, and then bam, another one.
All those
no rook
forks,
d4.
Huh? Man.
Yeah, now it's over.
Yep.
Boom.
And then just promote the pawn all the way.
Then just promote,
Because everything he can try and defend it would be a fork,
Right.
So I think, I guess, you know, in terms of, I'm obviously a very strong opponent.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe he doesn't have even though he understood he was he had the edge, you know, somehow strategically, but he missed some of the subtle details, right? Subtle ideas. I noticed, for example, against Mikhailevsky, against Victor.
Right.
Aram used Trompowsky, so maybe like he's a little bit more familiar with those kind of structures. But here it was a little bit challenging for him to see those resources.
You come with the Benoni, it's coming like old school from another generation.
Well, one thing I feel like for the solid players out there, I think maybe instead of putting that knight on g3, especially as the knight actually later came all the way back down to c4, put the knight on c1 maybe, huh? Might have been the more...
or another way of saying it is that knight g3 is a popular idea, right, to do that thing. And then if you're going to do it, maybe you just have to tell yourself immediately, well, it's f4. I'm going to have to play f4 at some point.
Commit to the attack.
You just committed to it, Just say, I'm coming in.
Yeah.
Because that's the cool thing about g3, right? It's like protecting the pawn. Then later you're going to land on e4 and you're going to try to do some magic. Yeah. Well, Timur, beautiful game.
Yeah,
I hope we can have you here again.
Thank you.
I want to play the video again. You know what we're doing? We're playing the skydive every time you win. Every time you win. So you got to win for us so we keep it going.
Cool. Well, it's nice to win at least once in a tournament, right?
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll take a commercial break. We'll be right back.
A moment comes in chess when you need to test yourself at a different level. Chess 24 Premium offers the tools that you need to reach your maximum potential. From hundreds of interactive video lessons to becoming part of the Chess 24 community. You can analyze with friends or coach your students live. You get 24/7 coverage of chess news and events, access to premium analysis and commentary, and the chance to interact with grandmasters and other top players and coaches. Get advice from the best and even challenge them to a battle. Be the best chess player you can be. It's time to level up your game with Chess 24 Premium membership.
struggles, winning game after game. The opposition has never been as heated, as fierce over elite chess tournaments in the world.
We're in overtime. Welcome back to the Winter Chess Classic. Ben Simon and Grandmaster Jesse Kraai. Jesse, you've got your favorite game on the board as we say goodbye. Let's take a final glance.
Well, you know, I just wanted to give everybody a sense of where this was. You can keep watching this game at uschesschamps.org. .com. It is a real struggle. White definitely has the advantage, but black is going after creative counterplay here with the king, the knight at some point, and the rook, which can go anywhere, and this is where it becomes a real technical challenge to hold on to your pawn and keep black's pieces corralled. So completely reasonable chances for Samuel to hold on here, but as has been the theme for several rounds now, Jeffrey has the time advantage, and it's serious, and Samuel only has 10 minutes left for the entire game, right? 30 seconds still, you get extra move, but that's our state of things, and I'll hand it back to you.
All right, and you can, once again, keep following the games. We've got quite a few in progress, and that one in particular is going to be very important for the standings overall. But we've got some big upcoming events, and it all starts tomorrow. Remember, the World Chess Championship is going to be live from London, and you can see it on the official site, worldchess.com. St. Louis will have its own coverage with Yasser, Jen, and Maurice. It starts tomorrow. Our coverage is at 11 a.m. Central. And also, not only will you see that on our Today in Chess program, you'll also see the Women's World Chess Championship, the big 64-player knockout. We're going to have a bunch of guests on the show every day. It's going to be a lot of fun following Fabiano versus Magnus. After that, we have the Winter Invitational coming up. It's a Norm event. It starts on November 16th, and it will go during the latter part of the World Chess Championship. We will bring that to you, and I think that Jonathan Schrantz might be hosting that along with Grandmaster Vladimir Georgiev. That should be a lot of fun. We end the year back in London for the finale of the Grand Chess Tour, a 4-player knockout, classical, rapid, and blitz. It's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. grandchesstour.org to watch that one. So that does it for today. We will still be on the air with you tomorrow at 3:30 p.m.
Yeah.
The round starts at 1 p.m. for the Winter Chess Classic, and if the stars align, the first game of the World Championship will have concluded by the time we go on the air, so it'll be a nice little transition. But we could be on at the same time as Today in Chess. They're just across the hall in Studio A. So there's so much going on in St. Louis. It's crazy. We hope to see you tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Central Time for this event. And the World Championship, 11 a.m. Central Time. Join us right here at the St. Louis Chess Club. So for the entire B team, Tammy Hyde, the streamer, Isaac Schrantz, graphics and audio, Danny Machuca, the technical director, for Grandmaster Jesse Kraai, my name is Ben Simon. We say so long from the Show Me State. This has been a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club.